This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. 2.5 Admins, episode 284. I'm Joe.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Alan.
And here we are again. And before we get started, your customary Clara article plug, Alan, is Clara's expert perspective on OpenZFS in 2026 and what to expect next.
Yeah, so the ZFS team got together and we came up with a couple of predictions for 2026, including how memory prices will change buying behavior and why that's leading to changes to the L2 arc in ZFS, how newer NVMe designs that take less RAM on the NVMe device will change how ZFS has to work on NVMe, new self-regenerating hard drives and how that might come into play with AnyRAID, and finally, how disaster recovery will become more ingrained as part of cybersecurity and cyber resilience, and so as that shifts, what that will mean for ZFS as well.
Okay, and you've got a webinar to plug as well.
Yes, on February 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern, Wendell Wilson from Level 1 Techs and I will be doing Modern VDI on Proxmox, ZFS reliability and GPU acceleration at lower cost. So we'll be talking about doing hyperconverged Proxmox on ZFS and using GPUs where we can actually do hardware pass-through and SRIOV to split one GPU up to many VMs to get the acceleration. Also, probably going to talk about ZFS dedupe for VMs as well.
Right, well, link to both of those in the show notes. Microsoft gave the FBI keys to unlock encrypted data, exposing major privacy flaw.
Yeah, so the way BitLocker works on the home versions of Microsoft Windows is when you set it up, it creates an encryption key that encrypts your drive and it saves that in the TPM. And that means if you change something about the computer, that could get erased and you would no longer have access to the encrypted drive. So it also creates a recovery key, which is basically everything that's encrypted is actually encrypted to two different keys, or rather, there's one master key that's wrapped with these two different keys. And that recovery key gets stored in your Microsoft account online so that you can recover your key if you change a component of your computer and your motherboard decides that the TPM is invalidated. The problem being that Microsoft can recover your encrypted disk for you, but it also means they can recover it for someone else if they ask very nicely or very not nicely.
And the only way to avoid this is with Windows 11 Pro. If you're using the home version, there's seemingly no way to not give your key to Microsoft, or at least the recovery key.
You don't only need Pro, you need Pro and a lot of confidence, because when you encrypt a drive with BitLocker using the Pro version of Windows, it's going to tell you you're not done yet. To complete encrypting your drive, you must sign in with your Microsoft account. So the way to avoid doing that is just to ignore it telling you have to do that. Your drive's actually already encrypted. Hopefully you have, in fact, really printed off and saved or, otherwise made an external, not attached to the computer copy of the scratch codes, which are, it's another version of getting at that recovery key that Alan was mentioning, so that should your TPM, go wheels up or, should something else happen that makes it impossible for you to decrypt the drive, maybe you forget the passphrase that you've used to encrypt it. These scratch codes will allow you to get back in it. You just have to go to your safe deposit box where you put the sheet of paper that you printed them on, or the USB drive you saved them on, or whatever, retrieve those scratch codes, and you use the scratch code instead of the normal key, and that will unlock the whole thing, even if the contents of the TPM have changed. It's worth noting also that you don't have to use the TPM itself, or at least you didn't have to a few years ago. I think it's still possible to use BitLocker with nothing but a manually entered in key, which it's really just a passphrase. You tell it, encrypt it with this passphrase, it transforms the passphrase into a whole lot more characters worth of, line noise derived from that passphrase. And the passphrase itself is kind of a shortcut to re-enter the whole key, which is actually what's necessary to decrypt the drive. But the things to really remember here are that, like I said, it's not just that you say, I'd like not to send my recovery key to Microsoft, please. You have to actually say no when it tells you you must do this.
Yeah, this is one of those classic trade-offs between security and convenience, right? If there's no backup of your recovery key, then if you lose the password, all your data's gone. And, that wouldn't be a very nice customer experience. And so you can see why they would build something like this. But at the same time, if they don't build it with the thoughts of, but what about the government in mind, then you end up in a situation where they can access the key. Or in this case, it seems Microsoft's happy to do this. But, we've seen other companies that design crypto systems like this, specifically designing them in a way where they kind of have zero knowledge of the key and make sure that even in the face of a legal request, it's like, we don't have the information to give you, sorry.
Well, Apple famously claims this, don't they?
Yeah. And it's the correct way to design a system like this most of the time. But the more secure you make it, the less convenient it is. And there is, a breaking point where that makes sense. Microsoft is maybe too far on the user-friendly side in a way that is actually user-unfriendly.
Microsoft? User-unfriendly? That doesn't sound like a 2.5 admin's take on things. It's probably worth noting, the general volume that this happens. Microsoft says that it releases about 20 keys a year to the FBI.
Yeah, in those cases, it's specifically with a legal court order.
So those are the ones that we know about.
Those are the ones with a legal court order. I'm guessing, if there's a national security letter or something, then they don't record those ones as part of this 20. But also, what happens in other countries where, maybe the legal system is not, well, I don't want to say the American legal system is fair anymore, but in totalitarian countries or something where the government might ask Microsoft for stuff without a reasonable reason to need it.
Well, the UK government, for example, have a law where they can compel a company to give them information like this, and it is illegal for that company to then tell anyone about it.
This is why we have things like warrant canaries, because, that can happen in the United States as well. A judge can issue a hush order and you can't talk about it. However, if you already had an ongoing practice that we update this file every Monday, if we haven't been served any kind of warrant and then you don't update that file, that's how you get around that, and that's why warrant canaries exist. Now, the other thing I want to point out here, Alan raised a really good point when he brought this up, that these 20 keys a year are with a legal court order. And I said, well, that's the ones that we know about, because the thing is, all we know is that Microsoft will turn them over. You're left to trust or not trust at your own discretion whether a friendly little request from back channels will actually produce a key or not. The fact of the matter is, Microsoft has custody of that key, and you don't know what Microsoft does behind closed doors. Even when a company says, this is our policy, we don't comply with this, you have to decide how much you believe them. Whereas in the case of a system like Apple's, where Apple never has access to your key in the first place, that's where you can at least come closer to trusting that kind of guarantee, because it doesn't matter if they want to give your stuff to the feds or not. They can't. That you can trust. No, don't worry. We're on your side, not the feds. No, you can't ever trust that. Particularly when, as we've already said, when it was possible to design it in such a way that you can't turn that over. But no, you didn't do it that way. You designed it so that you could. All right. Well, why'd you do that?
Well, like I said, the trade-off can be how hard the recovery is. With the Apple system, it's like, yes, you can back up an encrypted version of the key into your iCloud or whatever. And, that's encrypted with a key that Apple doesn't have, so they can't give it away. But if you lose that key, you're just as boned as you were if you didn't have a backup.
Well, and that's why if you don't like that, then to the best of my knowledge, you don't have to encrypt it with an extra key at all. And even if you did, make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're not going to stop you. Paint it on the wall. Nobody's going to be able to stop you from doing that. I don't buy the argument that the way that Apple does it is too hard for normies. Are you kidding me? It's Apple. Their whole deal is we're the easy one.
But also the safe one, as the point is. But I'm not saying that Microsoft is right to do it this way. I'm just saying there is a trade-off and they made a choice. I don't agree it's the right one, but they didn't necessarily do this just to be able to give the key to the government.
Just to be able to give the key to the government? No, but I think it's more than fair to point out an attitude of keeping default control. And Microsoft is very much in the camp of, by default, we don't give away control of anything, and we'll take control of anything that we can. And stuff like this happens that way. It's like when you set up a company and, you bring the lawyers in to draw up, terms of consent and EULAs and everything else. If you don't ride roughshod of those lawyers, they're going to write up terms for your users that are, essentially we own your firstborn child no matter what. And, the lawyers will say, oh, well, no, this is good. You want it this way. And if you don't want to enforce that, you don't have to. But this way, you have the right. And the lawyers think this is a good thing. And if you happen to be the sort of person who's like, yeah, but I don't want to do that to my customers. I want to be able to guarantee my customers that I'll treat them fairly. Well, you're going to have to get really directly involved because that's not what lawyers are just going to do for you because it's not the way they think.
We'll link to an Ars Technica article in the show notes, how to encrypt your PC's disk without giving the keys to Microsoft. It's very detailed, so if you want to sort it all out and not give your keys to Microsoft, then follow the instructions there. WhisperPair, hijacking Bluetooth accessories using Google FastPair. So Google FastPair is this standard that they came up with where you can just tap a Bluetooth device like a pair of headphones on your phone and then boom, they get connected together, no problem. Well, it turns out that a lot of people didn't implement that very securely, and attackers are able to then connect to your devices without you even knowing about it. And if you are an Apple user using these headphones, potentially people can then track you using Google's Find My technology.
Yeah, so basically, because they made this support for Android and non-Android devices, the way it works is when an Android device fast pairs with a thing, it writes the account key as the owner of the device, even if the device has been paired with something else before that didn't use FastPair. So if you had an Apple device and you paired the headphones and everything was fine, then someone with an Android came by and tapped them, they now own those headphones, even though they're still connected to your iPhone, and they can track them from anywhere.
Because you could force it into pairing mode when it shouldn't be in pairing mode, essentially, because it hadn't been implemented properly for a lot of pairs of headphones.
This is the part where I point out that for like 20 years, everybody was just in love with 2.4 gigahertz radio frequency mice and keyboards that were completely unencrypted and literally anybody could listen in on and inject traffic into, and nobody cared. I talked about it. Nobody cared. Yeah, but wireless is cool. If you're entrusting sensitive data through a Bluetooth channel and you're not layering your own really solid encryption on it, you are doing it so badly wrong. This is a consumer technology intended to be very easily used. It is never going to be something anyone should consider really secure.
Yeah, but people don't necessarily think that just because they've got a pair of Bluetooth headphones, someone can pair with it and then listen into their conversations via the microphone. I mean, they should.
I agree. People don't think that. People should think that. How do we make people think that? I don't know the answer. The best thing I know to tell people, because the people that we need to reach are not really going to follow all of the technical, okay, well, here's the exact thing they got wrong in the implementation of this particular protocol of fast pairing versus non-fast pairing, and Google's implementation of the fast pairing protocol versus third-party devices that also want to implement fast pairing, but they're not Google and they did their own. They're not going to follow all that. You can't teach them all that. However, you can say, look, if you got it from Walmart and it's just wireless and easy to use, yeah, that's not secure. That's convenient. If you're concerned about security, that's not the thing you should be using.
Yeah, and then in their little kind of FAQ in here, they have, can I protect myself against this attack? And they say, because fast pairing cannot be disabled, the only way to solve this is basically a firmware update for the Bluetooth device, assuming there is one. And they're like, please consult your accessories manual for instructions. And then, they also say, like, does unpairing or factory resetting the device fix the issue? It's like, no, factory resetting your device can remove the existing pairings, but it doesn't stop somebody from pairing with it again. You have to get the firmware fix. But yeah, it's definitely creepy to realize that, somebody could just walk by your Pixel Buds at the coffee shop and imprint their phone as the owner on them and then track you wherever you go.
When 2 years of academic work vanished with a single click. Oh, this is such a sad, sad tale. So this professor of plant sciences at the University of Cologne in Germany was pretty into ChatGPT. And in this article, he talks about using it for everything and how reliable and fast it was. But then, having used it for a couple of years and planned all his lessons and just done a load of work that was saved just in his ChatGPT account, and I quote, I temporarily disabled the data consent option because I wanted to see whether I could still have access to all of the model's functions if I did not provide OpenAI with my data. So it just deleted all his shit. And he didn't have many backups. And that was the end of that.
As soon as he took away his data consent, it deleted all of his chat history so that it wouldn't use that in future answers. And it turns out that contained all of his, quote, carefully structured academic work, which he didn't have any copies of inside the GPT. Well, he has a couple of random saved and copied bits, but it didn't have, his research, really, it turns out.
Yeah, the case wasn't that, he had most of it. He just lost a little bit of it that he hadn't backed up locally. The case was, he had copies of some stuff, but he was considering ChatGPT's own logs as his primary source.
Now, this isn't even about the ChatGPT and the AI and the, LLM thing at all, really, is it?
No, it's not. And that's exactly where I was going with this. It's weird because, this is 2.5 admins. If you've ever listened before, it's no surprise that we're not big on AI, but AI isn't even the problem here. What this reminded me of more than anything else is, have you ever had any users that insist on keeping their mission-critical documents in the recycle bin or their mission-critical emails in, the recycle bin in Outlook, and then they get upset when they disappear?
I've not had exactly that one, but I did a data recovery a couple of years ago for a university, which had like a 1 petabyte scratch pool that was specifically just temporary storage. Don't keep anything important here. And then when it went sideways, all the users were like, but that's all of our data. We keep all of the primary stuff there because you charge us money if we store it somewhere else.
I encounter that pretty frequently. I encounter a lot of users who consider the recycle bin to be just as good as any other folder. That's where everything goes, and they depend on things still being there forever. And then they get very upset when the contents of the recycle bin disappear. And it's like, dude, you're keeping your tax returns in the trash can. And then you got upset when somebody took the trash out.
You're keeping your lunch in the trash can and being concerned when the janitor comes by and empties the trash can. I was going to eat that.
The issue here is not ChatGPT, really. The issue here is that you were using something that was never intended to be primary, long-term, reliable storage for exactly that. You didn't back it up. You didn't assemble it all into a better form and save that locally. You're just like, oh, good enough.
Yeah, you didn't copy-paste it into a Word document.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Which is just nuts. And the issue isn't even, oh, that was dumb for him to click off, the data consent, whatever. No, you never should have been relying on that as your primary storage for 2 years of academic work in the first place. A, you shouldn't have been relying on that as your primary storage. B, you had 2 years of work that you didn't back up. I don't care where you put it. That's another thing you did desperately wrong. And then finally, C, the clicking off the data consent thing. Now we'll get to that. Like it's a pretty reasonable thought that if I'm changing some very basic parameters on this service, it might reset stuff. So if I want to experiment with that, even if I haven't already been backing my things up before now, which I really should have, I should at the very least realize, hey, I'm about to do something that might be dangerous. So I should be really certain that if it goes badly, it won't screw me. And there's just none of that. None.
I would have more sympathy with him if all the files had been on his laptop and he'd not backed them up from the laptop, and then the laptop had died or the SSD had died or whatever, and he had no access to it. I mean, yeah, he should have had backups, but this feels different to that.
Well, sure. I mean, what you're saying is if it was on the local laptop that wasn't backed up, I would say that he still fell afoul of the second mistake. The primary mistake, again, was putting things where it shouldn't have been to begin with. Then the next mistake was not backing it up. But at least if it was on his laptop, it was somewhere where it should have been, that was designed for you to store documents on and not have them disappear on you, assuming where he stored them on the laptop was not, again, the recycle bin. So it's a thing of there is no one single change you can make to that user's behavior that makes it sane. You need to change multiple things that he did badly wrong.
This makes me think that there's a lot of people heading for a big fall when the bubble bursts, these companies disappear, the servers get turned off, and all their shit gets deleted.
That's not even AI. You don't need LLMs for that. All you need is to say, what? You entrusted all your data to some weird fly-by-night cloud vendor? Well, yeah, that'll do it.
This one quote just kind of floored me. I assumed basic protective measures would be in place, including a warning about irrevocable deletion of my data, just because I paid them $20 a month. It's like, have you computered before?
Yeah, if this was social media, I would absolutely be searching for a GIF that asks, "Are you new here?" I'm sure there's several really good ones from all kinds of movies and cartoons, because that's something that you learn like really quickly. Like nobody taught me to be worried that, there wouldn't be, "Are you sure?" things in programs. I didn't need to be taught that. Like you find it out fast. It doesn't take long. Use a computer. You will find out there are errors that weren't trapped properly. There are conditions nobody considered. And honestly, I would argue that, God, I kind of feel like I'm carrying water a little bit for OpenAI here, but I feel like I could make a pretty good argument that it's not reasonable to expect OpenAI to have thought somebody would just be using chat logs as their primary storage for 2 years of academic work. It's not what that was for.
Yeah. OpenAI's response to this was, privacy by design, that the company was clear. Once deleted, chats can't be recovered, and there's no redundancy and there's no backups that allow that. Specifically, OpenAI fulfilled what they saw as a commitment to my privacy as a user by deleting the information the second I asked them to. I got kind of bastard operator from hell vibes from this. It's like, oh, you want me to delete it? Okay, it's all gone.
But that I actually was surprised at, and I don't know if I fully believe that they've got no copies of it.
I don't believe it for a second. I do believe that they don't have ready, easy access to the particular thing that guy's asked for, but that data doesn't exist somewhere in a training data set. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But, again, this is true of any cloud service. Please, everybody, stop just thinking, oh, well, if I let OpenAI handle my data, it'll be safe. Oh, if I let Microsoft handle my data, it'll be safe. Oh, if I let Apple. No. Apple, Google, Microsoft, they will all lose your data. I have had every single one of those entities lose data entirely on their fault from the cloud for, either myself personally or, one or more of my users. It happens. It will happen. You still are ultimately responsible for keeping your own data safe if you care about it.
Let's do some free consulting then. But first, just a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. And if you want to send in your questions for Jim and Alan or your feedback, you can email show@2.5admins.com. Another perk of being a patron is you get to skip the queue, which is what Alexandra has done. We hear you shouldn't run your own mail server quite a lot in 2026. Let's say I really want to, for the same reason I run Image, so Google isn't the single point of failure and ownership for my important data. What best practices and stack would you recommend, assuming Linux?
For myself, that's generally postfix and dovecot, plus, all the extra crap you have to do, like OpenDKIM and so on, to try to have some deliverability. But it is an uphill battle. If you want to fight it, then you're welcome to. But for example, for some of the stuff that I have to do, we have our own postfix server that runs with our custom applications and integrates with our ticket system. And it relays everything through a Microsoft Exchange server hosted by Microsoft, because that means that the messages will actually get through. But yeah, if you want to do your own thing, I think postfix and dovecot are the best bet. What do you think, Jim?
Definitely postfix and dovecot. I'll expand on that a little bit. It's assuming that we're talking about, full-featured mail server for actual humans to use, and not just a relay like for the Office copier or whatever. I would add Roundcube and postfix admin to that package list. Roundcube will give you a really, really nice webmail client. Matter of fact, it's so nice, that is what I use as my mail client these days. I no longer use a local mail client because I prefer the Roundcube web interface. It works really well. Postfix admin will give you a really nice web-based administration interface that lets you create, manage, destroy virtual domains so you can run mail from more than one domain at once. Also manage mailboxes on those domains, aliases, the whole thing. Instead of having to, mess around in a ton of little text config files, you can do the nice little clickety-click, drop downs and everything that you would want in a web interface. The big thing that I would caution folks about, above and beyond the warnings that Alan already gave you, is that it can be really difficult to get your own mail server configured properly to avoid emitting backscatter. Most of the tie-ins for, any kind of like spam assassin, which also really needs to be part of your stack, you got to have spam filtering. most of the ready-to-go plugins for that they'll emit backscatter. They will send a bounce message rather than doing the scan while the SMTP conversation is live and terminating it with a "I refuse to deliver this" error if it doesn't like it. In order to avoid that, I had to write a little bit of my own glue scripts as wrappers to call the things and perform the logic that I needed it to. And to the best of my knowledge, that's probably still going to be the case today. So it is really not an undertaking to be taken casually. Like I said, if you're just setting up like a relay, to get things out of the office, like you have a really stupid photocopier that, it can't be configured with a Gmail account, or you find that Google keeps breaking any kind of relay that you have, et cetera, that's pretty easy to configure. But once you get into wanting, live spam filtering, virus scanning, all that kind of thing, you're definitely getting into a lot of work, not only on deliverability, but also just on getting it all to work together the way that it really ought to.
One other tool you mentioned, Spam Assassin. Another one to look at is RSpamD, which is the rapid spam filtering system. It's a great open source tool for dealing with spam.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. Remember, show@2.5admins.com if you want to send any questions or your feedback. You can find me at joelrest.com/mastodon.
You can find me at mercenariesysadmin.com.
And I'm at Alan Jude.
We'll see you next week.